So, your Chapter 13 plan has been confirmed or approved. So now what? Well, stay tuned, Bankruptcy Bailout Buddies, and we'll talk about it. Welcome, borrowers and debtors, to Bankruptcy Bailout, because debt ruins lives, not bankruptcy. My name is Matt Burkus, Colorado bankruptcy and debt relief attorney. Today, we're talking about, well, what do you do now that your Chapter 13 plan has been confirmed? So, if you're watching this video, you've just completed the 4 to 6 month, possibly 9 month process of filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and getting your plan approved. So you hired your attorney, you gathered all that information, you met with the attorney probably a couple times to go over stuff, you filed your case, you went to the trustee meeting, then the trustee filed an objection, you and your attorney worked to resolve the objection, and now you're finally at the goal or the meaningful endpoint of a Chapter 13, which is plan confirmation. The court has entered its order approving your plan. So now what happens? Well, the best case scenario is you just live your life and make your payments. But there are some things you have to keep in mind now that your Chapter 13 plan is confirmed. Now, first, you need to file your tax returns on time. No extensions. So you need to file your tax returns by the April deadline. Now, districts will vary on whether you need to provide your tax returns each year in the Chapter 13. So that's an issue you need to discuss with your attorney in your state. But a lot of times, Chapter 13 trustees are going to audit debtors when they're in Chapter 13, and the main way they do that is by asking for your tax returns. And if your Chapter 13 involves back taxes, you absolutely have to file your tax returns on time. You can't file an extension, so you got to do it by the April deadline. So that's number one. Now, number two, you know what? Life happens. Chapter 13s are most Chapter 13s are 5 years long. Now, as a side note, it's ridiculous that Chapter 13s are that long. They used to be 3 years. All right, but that's a different topic. We won't get into that here, but just understand that the fact that Chapter 13s are 5 years long is just utterly stupid. In any event, life happens. You need to be proactive and get back with your attorney to be out in front of whatever the issue is. So if you have a job change, if you lose your job, if you want to sell your house, if you want to buy a car, if you're getting divorced, if you're getting married, these are all major events that are going to impact the Chapter 13 and require you to make some sort of change or get some sort of approval in order to move forward. Then, and of course, whatever you do, prioritize the Chapter 13 payment. In other words, don't fall behind on the Chapter 13 payment. You need to treat it as the most important payment, maybe next to your mortgage, that you're paying. Now, it's not the end of the world if you fall behind on your payment, at least in most districts, it's not the end of the world. If you can get caught up, most trustees and most districts will allow you to do that. And by caught up, we're talking maybe one payment, 2 payments behind. Most trustees, most trustees will file a motion to dismiss your Chapter 13 once you're 2 months behind. So if you fall behind, again, get back in touch with your attorney, review your options, and deal with the situation proactively. All right, so what else do we have to be worried about, or what else happens in Chapter 13? Well, one of the elephants in the room is the active part of your case is over when your plan is confirmed. So now, the way attorney's fees work in most Chapter 13s is the attorney's fees get billed up through confirmation, and then you probably paid some amount of attorney fees up front to hire your attorney, and the rest of your attorney fees are being paid through the Chapter 13 plan, right? So, if you need your attorney going forward after confirmation, just understand you're going to be accruing additional attorney's fees. Now, sometimes those additional fees can be put in the plan, but sometimes they can't. But the bottom line is you are going to be responsible for those additional attorney fees. Now, don't let that hesitate you from contacting your attorney, because you're going to need your attorney if something happens in your Chapter 13. But just realize that anything your attorney does after plan confirmation entails new attorney's fees. Another question about Chapter 13s after confirmation is, how about rebuilding credit? You absolutely can rebuild your credit during Chapter 13 bankruptcy. I have another video that talks about the 3 easy steps to rebuild credit after bankruptcy. Those steps equally apply to Chapter 13, so I will just link the video here and you can click on that if you like. And then lastly, just understand that the key to success in Chapter 13 is, 1, having a good attorney and working with your attorney to set up a realistic budget. All right, so that's step 1. But we still have to comply with the requirements of Chapter 13. Your task for successful Chapter 13 is to live within that budget. And I see this a lot, that it's very difficult in the first 6 months to a year for a person to transition from their pre-bankruptcy lifestyle to their post-filing new lifestyle, right? Because whatever reason is that you're in bankruptcy, I mean, there was a debt issue, whether it's medical bills, credit cards, stopping foreclosure, usually some sort of interruption in income that's been resolved, but now you're into Chapter 13 to fix whatever happened. But usually there's some habits and there's some spending habits that need to be addressed, and you really need to take the time to focus in and budget your expenses so you can make the Chapter 13 payment and meet all your other obligations. So that's the main key to success in a Chapter 13 once the plan has been confirmed. And then, fair warning, about 2 to 3 years into the Chapter 13, you will get what I call debtor fatigue. You know, you've been in it, you're making your payments each month, you're 2 to 3 years in, and you got another maybe 2.5, 2 years to go. And invariably, I'll get some sort of phone call from those people asking, well, how do they get out of Chapter 13 bankruptcy? I do have another video on how to get out of Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Most of the time you can't. You're going to have to sort of stick with it and make it work. But usually also with debtor fatigue, there's usually some sort of change that's on the horizon. So again, we go back to that, what I talked about previously about changes in Chapter 13, is we may have to do a modified plan or update your Chapter 13 to reflect your new situation. So the best case scenario after your Chapter 13 is that it's smooth sailing. You're just going to make your payments for the remainder of the time that you're in Chapter 13, and when you get to the end, there's a little bit of paperwork that gets done to get your discharge, and then you're done. A successful Chapter 13 is actually pretty rare. Most people either end up in a situation where they have to convert their case to Chapter 7 and get their bankruptcy discharge that way, or the Chapter 13 fails for some reason, usually due to circumstances beyond the debtor's control, either a new medical issue, loss of job, or something along those lines. So if you do get to the end, celebrate, because it is an accomplishment to actually finish a Chapter 13 and get your discharge. My name is Matt Burkus, Colorado Bankruptcy and Debt Relief Attorney. I offer free initial phone consultations to residents of Colorado for the purposes of bankruptcy. Stay tuned for my contact information, and we look forward to working with you. Take care.